Nasdaq's Enterprise Technology Show. I'm Brian Fernandez.
And I'm Jeffrey Halley.
And today we have Ben Cody, Senior Vice President of Product Management at SailPoint.
SailPoint Technologies is an Austin, Texas tech company that provides identity management and governance for unstructured data access. SailPoint was founded in 2005, and to tell us more, we'd like to welcome Ben to the show today.
Thanks again. It's great to be here.
Now, Ben, for a start, could you just give us an overview of SailPoint, its history, and also your role within the company?
Yeah, so it's as Jeffrey mentioned, is founded in 2005, so coming up on 18, 19 years, something like that. You know, our founders are too modest to say that SailPoint invented the identity governance space, but I would contend that's true. I wasn't here at the time, but have been, thankful to join the company in its journey along the way. It's progressed beyond just traditional governance certifications and things like that into what we call more broadly identity security, because we're all about helping organizations and ensure that identity is not the weak link in their security strategy. And so my role here today, or with the company today, is around product management. So that's responsible for product strategy as well as the roadmap, where we're going, what's getting released, what we prioritize from an investment perspective.
And Ben, organizations, why are organizations being forced to ramp up their identity and access management? And could you perhaps tell our viewers more precisely what is identity access management in the modern world all about?
You bet. So identity is unfortunately at the heart of the majority of security breaches that are out there. In fact, some stats would say that 90% of breaches are the result of an identity being compromised. So that typically starts with a phishing attack, which for those of you that don't know, that's an email that's crafted. We often use the term spear phishing, which is targeted at its very specific executives with a handcrafted kind of message. But in any case, the identity gets compromised, and then the attacker leverages that access to then ultimately breach, perform a data breach, or in some cases, download ransomware, or whatever their ultimate end goal is. But identity is the way in for the majority of data breaches today. Now, in terms of what is identity access management, there's really kind of two segments to identity management. I think it's important for the listeners to get. There's what we call the front door, which is figuring out who are you and do we let you in the front door. I mean, that's historically been the realm of the folks that do single sign-on and things like that. And then there's the piece, once you get through that front door, you've got access to this entire building, or you could have access to this entire building. We control that, which rooms you get to go to, and then once you get into those rooms, what you're able to do. That's kind of our role.
Okay. And in 2024, I mean, technology moves very quickly. So how will identity security, will it become more prominent? Will its role become more prominent in enhancing network defenses in 2024?
Yeah, I think in 24, what we're seeing is an increased desire to feed those signals and that intelligence that we see from an identity management standpoint into the broader security ecosystem. So we've got a view into what we call entitlement. So everybody in the organization, what systems they're allowed to have access to, what access once they get into those systems, what they're allowed to do, hence their entitlements. And that's really important for the security operations center, which is kind of the nerve center of your security organization. It's really critical for them to be able to see this identity that's maybe they're seeing some suspicious activity around. Well, what's this identity allowed to do? Is this a database administrator that has an extraordinary level of access, or is this the person that's working the front door? And now, look, it's important to look at every threat, but of course you're going to prioritize the things that are associated with somebody that has an elevated set of privileges. So feeding into that broader ecosystem, the SOC, tying in with technologies called XDR, which is like what CrowdStrike does, and others, to be able to provide additional intelligence about what's going on within the ecosystem is a pretty key thing. I would also tell you too that you mentioned data when you were introducing SailPoint. Data security, data privacy is a really important thing. 87 countries in the last 5 years have introduced some sort of new data privacy regulation. So it's really critical for organizations to understand not only what data they have, there's lots of tools out there that help you understand that, but more importantly, who has access to that? How do you ensure and review that that access is appropriate access? And then also too, I think this is especially relevant for a lot of our customers that we talk to in Asia. How do you, when somebody needs access to that data legitimately, how do you make sure that happens very quickly? You know, because identity security just can't be all about saying no or putting rigid controls in place. You have to be a business enabler here too. Otherwise, this is not going to work for everybody.
Exactly. So, and that's a critical point so you need to be a business enabler. And I'm going to take that point up a little bit because cybersecurity is obviously top of mind for CIOs and all that, especially in the last 3 years where we've had just exponential increases in attacks, identity, and the human factor and identity compromises are one of the easiest ways where basically the bad actors get in.
Absolutely.
Now, can I ask you this, Ben? In 2024 now, what is next generation identity access management looking like? And what's the role of artificial intelligence in terms of helping this whole transformation happen?
Well, I think a big thing that you're seeing in 24 is that people want an integrated approach because identities aren't just limited to traditional employees anymore. I mean, historically that was the thing, but you know, especially I think this was already happening, but COVID accelerated it, and that you've got all these non-employees that are out there that need and want access to these systems too. And especially, I think globally, there's just more and more of a trend to leveraging third parties and specialists and outsourcing and all those things. So and those people churn a lot, and you don't have nearly as much control over those people as you do your employees. So how do you make that happen very efficiently? That's one, but then there's also just service accounts, machine identities, bots, RPAs, you know, all this automated technology. That all has identities too, and you need to govern that as well. So you need one system to look at that. By the way, for all the bots and non-humans, who's that human that's responsible for that? And like, are they on top of their game? I mean, those are all really key trends that we're seeing in 2024. And look, this thing has gotten so big that it's all going to be AI driven. I mean, it's just, I talk to customers every day that literally have thousands of systems that they're trying to govern access for, and tens, if not hundreds of thousands of employees. And like, this is just beyond the realm of what a human can go look at. I mean, you have to have AI to tell you, like, look, this is where your risk is. This is why we think it's risky. This is what we recommend you do. And be proactive. You know, in the old days of identity security, where you just went back in and looked every 90 days and said, yeah, just, you know, check the box. This guy still needs access to the stuff. You need a much more of a real-time view, and that's where AI comes into play. It's that wingman, so to speak. And everybody's calling their AI thing a co-pilot. I'm trying to avoid that, but it is truly that. You need somebody to help you.
So I guess it's a balancing act between managing access of employees or contracts or whomever to areas of data within an enterprise against actually being an obstructive entity within an enterprise that sort of obstructs doing business. I guess it becomes a very fine balancing act with regards to identity and access management. Thinking about 2024, what is the business value that the next generation identity server delivery brings to an enterprise?
Faster onboarding, especially you think about all those companies with all these third parties. Let's say you've got a call center in the Philippines, which is an extremely common scenario, and you want to be able to, and look, those call centers have, you know, some churn. I mean, they just do. And so how do you get those people on really quickly, same day? And by the way, when they leave, how do you get them off? Because they're going to leave, you know, in fairly short order too. Also, you hear all the time, but look, they may be taking inbound calls one day or the first part of their shift where they're handling customer service, but you may flip their role and say, look, I want you to do outbound calling and do revenue generation the second part of your shift. How do you flip their role right on the fly, you know, so that they're not provisioned to do both when you don't want them doing both? And how do you make that all in real time? And again, where you've got risk or, you know, behavior that seems out of the norm, being able to flag that right away, that's that's where business value comes in. But it's that onboarding and that offboarding, because look, let me tell you, these identity breaches, when it's some third party, some contractor, we all know about Target and the AC technician, way back, and like that's not a good look. That's just not a good look, because you're saying, wow, this wasn't Eric Snowden who had all this, advanced access and, whatever. No, this is somebody you should have been, this is somebody you should have known. You should have been on top of this,
what, Ben, that example is a great example, the Edward Snowden thing. And I think he was a corporal only, right? And he had all
he was
access.
he was actually a civilian contractor, but
Okay.
he was not he was no, his government service level was not high. In America there's all these GS, like all the way through 8, 10, 12. No, he was pretty, it was not a senior person.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the young man who was I think at the Air Force Reserve, who leaked the Ukrainian plans on Telegram. And I'm thinking, how on earth did he have access to that sort of information in the first place? But I guess it comes back to your point again, giant organizations like the Department of Defense, for example, they're disseminating information, who gets access to it and when. And I guess, that's a fairly obvious highlight.
Without comment on that one in particular, just in what happens in a lot of cases without an AI-based approach so this gets into role modeling. Sorry, let me back up. This gets into role modeling. What's your role? And you can, and by the way, your role, by the way, it can change on a daily basis or a weekly basis, but what's your role, and what is the least privileged access that you need to accomplish that role? Historically, a lot of organizations have shied away from modeling those roles because it's tedious, it's time consuming. I got to sit down, do a bunch of modeling, ask a bunch of people and build this thing, and then it changes. It's where AI comes in. Like, it can say, look, show me a group of fairly common people, and then I'll figure out what their access is. I'll see what they're using. By the way, I'll tell you based on the access you've given them, I can tell you what they actually need, which is probably a subset of what you've actually given them. And then also too, when you want to shift them, again, like that call center person, from inbound customer service to outbound selling, I can just make it with a flip of the switch, or you hit a button and say, look, I want them to have a different role today, and I'm going to want to switch them back that afternoon or the next day. That's where AI comes in. It can take all the heavy lifting out of what, out of traditional IGA, which is everybody has always been scared of doing all this role modeling. They've got to go in and do all this business analysis work, and my business is changing on the fly. I don't have time to do all this stuff. And that's where AI comes in. Makes it all easy and very fast.
Ben, this is really
all the time.
Because I've had conversations like this where I've moderated C-suites, particularly CIO and CISOs, and that's what they've said. One of the key challenges is modeling all these different access, and so what traditionally obviously happens is you tend to group them. You group them, rather than, as you said, now AI will empower them to go to much smaller individual job title level to give them access.
That's right. And think about this too. What you want to be able to do too is, let's say you're a large outsourcer in India or IT services provider, and you don't want separate roles for everybody on individual accounts. Like, I'm on account A or B or C or whatever. You want to be able to just have that be metadata driven. That's where we're going with this policy engine that we built. You say, look, this guy is on this account. I just click a button, and then all of a sudden all the entitlements and are conveyed to this person as is appropriate for them to be on that account. But the next day they may be on a competitor's account, and you dang sure better, you better take them off. You better make sure that their access is curtailed to the first account they were on, and they're only allowed to access the second. You don't have to go build a completely separate role for the consultants just on this one account. You want that to be all metadata driven, all policy driven, and that's again a big advancement that we're making, and I think will change identity security in 24. Back to your question.
Because I guess machine learning, you'd be using a K nearest neighbor, but AI allows you to evolve that process substantially and actually make it more responsive on a more granular level in a large organization. Ben, can we also now talk about your newly launched product, SailPoint Atlas?
We can. Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. So Atlas is a common platform that we build all of our own technology on. And look, it's not something that we built overnight. You don't build technology platforms overnight. It's been a an evolutionary approach for us, but it's the launch and the branding represents how important we believe platform is. One of the big things to you kind of hit on it there a little bit earlier was it's common data model, and you have to have that to do AI based learning. You have to have that common data model, otherwise you can't make sense out of everything that's going on. So it's common data model, but it's also a common set of forms, common set of workflows, so that all this stuff can be implemented very easily. And the difference is across all those different identity types. Historically, you'd have a separate solution for managing your employees. You might have a separate thing for contractors. It might even just be a spreadsheet, which has gotten a lot of people into a lot of trouble. You have to have a third system for your machine identities, your bots, your service accounts. This is stitching all that together and providing a single view of accountability. But and conversely, a fast path on all this stuff, so that this stuff doesn't get caught in red tape again, where you're onboarding, and just as importantly, where you're offboarding. You got to get that access removed just as fast. Somebody leaves, it's responsible for all your accounts to your ERP system, that the accounts your ERP system uses to log into your database. That guy leaves or is no longer in that role. Like, who's responsible for that now? That needs to happen fast.
Now,
and that's what Atlas is all about. Just making all that work together seamlessly. Unified user experience. Big thing about Atlas too is like all of our administrators, they're stretched so thin. I mean, there's only so many of them. We all know about the cyber talent shortage. So it's about helping them focus on the stuff they need to get done today. Like where's the risk at? Or where's your bottlenecks? With all this access provisioning that you need to accomplish your business goals, where's that being bottlenecked? And that, focusing that administrator on the real business problems today that they have at that moment, that's a big part of what Atlas does too.
Right.
Now, Ben, in 2024, now, if I'm a CIO, what are some key trends that I should be cognizant of in terms of identity access management and cybersecurity?
Yeah, 2 or 3 things. Again, the non-employee trend's big. I think what you're going to be seeing is with the advent of SASE technologies, the secure edge technologies, it's so much easier to extend applications outside of your traditional 4 walls. So how you govern that is not just with suppliers, it's agents, it's dealers, all up and down your supply chain. Clearly Asia plays a massive role in the world supply chain. And so I guarantee you that macro trend of how you digitally integrate those supply chains is a big thing for a lot of companies. And as you do that, you better make sure you've got a strategy for managing identities there. Because as players move in and out of that supply chain, engineers go from one organization to the next, you've got to protect intellectual property, all those sorts of things. That's a really, managing that extended set of relationships. That's a huge trend within identity management. Also, just being increasingly risk-based, as I was speaking about early into the scenario, how you feed a lot of the intelligence about what identities have access to into your cyber response, strategy. That's really key, because then you can prioritize suspicious activity around the identities that matter, your privileged access, and or your senior executives are probably already on a watch list, but what about all those database administrators and those application administrators and the people that have, which by the way, we have technology to help you find this, that have changed jobs like 5 times and have access to 5 different sets of roles. Now we can help you skinny that down in the first place, or that person that's working on your your M&A project. Again, they could be down the org, so they're not on your SOC's radar, but we can help the SOC understand, hey, this person's got extraordinary level of privilege, and how do we respond accordingly when we see suspicious activity?
Fascinating. Ben, is there any other final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Well, look, this thing's a journey. You got, although we've done a ton of work to make this a lot more, and it is way more, the path to getting value from it is fast now compared to where it used to be, but this thing's a journey. You've got to take it in steps depending on where you are, but there's ample business benefits in terms of being able to move faster and respond to changing conditions quickly. And you can do that while also reducing your risk. So that, I guess if I could impart anything, it would be that it's a journey, and now's the time to embark on it.
Marvelous. We've been speaking to Ben Cody, the Senior Vice President of Product Management at SailPoint. I'm Jeffrey Halley.
And I'm Brian Fernandez, and you've been watching and listening to BizTech's Enterprise Technology Show. This interview will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.